G'day folks, Ziggy D here with a little bit of news about Path of Exile 1's upcoming Legacy of Phrecia League. They just revealed the endgame specialization system, and I was really excited to read about this because I saw the teaser, and it's a relic board. I'm like, clearly this is a relic board for endgame. I love the relic board. This is going to be a fine addition to the endgame customization of Path of Exile 1, which is in its such a good state at the moment. And then I kept reading, and it was like the first or second line, it says, replacing the existing Atlas passive skill tree, and my heart just sunk. And I had some small hope as I kept reading that maybe it would make sense, but I can't get it to make sense. So I thought I'd just give my opinions and thoughts on this one here, because I am a little bit concerned about the implementation of this. I think this is something I could have been excited about, and something that could be a cool addition to PoE 1 or even PoE 2, but this implementation in this event does sound a little sketchy. Now, obviously, just with the whole fact that it is a short-term event, it's the perfect time for them to do something silly like completely scrap an endgame system and replace it with something else. And for the Ascendancies, I'm all over that. Yeah, sure, the builds will be all completely different. I think that's super fun. I just think this one here doesn't really make a lot of sense for some reasons we'll get into here. So quickly, let's go over the system though. It's a relic board for customizing your endgame mappings system with the various sorts of things that you find on Path of Exile's Atlas passive skill trees. So things like adding a chance to have a mechanic in your map or modifying how those mechanics work in some way. So it's the same sort of stuff you see there, but it's going to be on these items here, these idols. So the idols will be dropping in in-game maps. There'll be a physical item that you can trade between players. That's going to open up new itemization, new trading options, new wealth production, all of that stuff. They are unmodifiable and not craftable, which is probably the right choice, but hard to say on that one. And they'll have combos of kind of the minor and major notable passives, etc. from the tree, but there'll also be unique ones that give you the equivalent of keystones. So as far as I can tell, they're pretty much everything they've revealed here is identical to what's available on the Atlas tree. So I think they've basically copy pasted from the Atlas tree into this itemization system. And I think in a world where the Atlas passive tree didn't exist, this would be a cool way of doing like an endgame customization system. If some indie dev made like a PoE inspired mini action RPG and they had this as their map customization system, I'd be like, cool, that's awesome. What a great idea. But yeah, it does seem like a step backwards from the Atlas passive tree here. I do think this is likely a test of an idea that they could implement into Path of Exile 2. And I'm here for that, because adding something like this to what they've got currently in PoE 2 would be a step up from that game's current tree. But it does seem like a step back for PoE 1. So it is indeed replacing the current endgame Atlas trees, which, just as a bit of an overview, the Atlas passive tree in Path of Exile 1 is, in my opinion, in its best state ever. It has very smooth progression. Basically every map you do, you progress, you get a point, you work towards your strategies. It has many different viable and great and fun strategies for like every kind of tier of mapping, every aspect, every part of your progression. People will use progression trees designed to carry them smoothly up into high tier maps. People will use low level farming strategies, mid level farming strategies, and various endgame farming strategies. And now with the ability to change between the trees so easily that you have at the click of a button, you can change between multiple strategies. You can have a strategy where you farm a resource that then leads into a second strategy that you just swap between. You swap to a third strategy for a different build that likes bossing or whatever. Great system. I think very popular overall, and big fan of it, basically in its best state ever for character customization and appeal to the broader player base. It's not just good for like elite veterans, but actually has something for everyone. It is like a little bit intimidating looking to a new player, sure, just like Path of Exile passive trees are, but the actual progression that it has and the options that it gives you early on, I think work quite well. And there's always guides for following a tree, that sort of thing. So, for my opinions on the relic system replacing the Atlas tree for this event, it adds a cost to your core progression, and that to me is somewhat concerning. So this tree's free, right? Progressing through this tree is free. Now you either have to get lucky and drop the specific sorts of things that you want to be able to implement a strategy that you were able to do for free before. You now have to either get that as a drop, or much more realistically, given the variance levels here, the lack of determinism means that it's going to be a lot of trading. So not only that, but I feel like it's kind of lose-lose here. If they make these really common, a drop like candy, that's going to mean a lot of loot to pick up and bring back every map. You know, are you going to just not identify them and just buy them off trade? Are you going to how many of these are you going to be identifying and sorting into stash tabs and trying to price check and all of that jazz every map? You know, is it 3 or 4 or 5? Is it half an inventory load of them? Is it just one? If they're rare, then actually getting good modifier combinations that combine like 3 or 4 different leagues together to work together in a synergistic strategy is going to be really hard and really expensive. You know, we might be talking multiple divines for ones that just have the right modifiers together. You know, if your strategy incorporates doing Delirium, Breach, and Abyss all together, then that's 3 modifiers that have to be on every one of your relics, right? And if you want to actually do that strategy, otherwise, you know, you're way behind what you can normally do. So it bears mentioning, we don't balance run SSF. That's very true, but we can't not mention the impact that's obviously going to have on SSF. SSF progression is certainly going to be very interesting. SSF players are a different breed though. Sometimes they just enjoy that struggle, so it may not be a big deal. Ultimately, it is far less deterministically in the end, right? Like, you're not getting that point by point progression to exactly what you want. You're not gonna be like, I'm gonna go exactly into an, you know, essence strategy as you go through the maps, and you know that like at 40 maps completed, you're gonna have your strategy online. It's a question mark, you know, unless you're very proactively live searching for these on trade. You're not gonna have any sort of like consistent progression with this. It's gonna be bursty, which could admittedly be fun. When you get a big relic drop, it's probably going to be really exciting when you see a god tier relic drop, just like any other loot. So adding more loot to the game is always fun. It's a loot-driven game. But I think this customizing your mapping experience comes so far, and it's the exact place where you want that consistent deterministic progression, because it's what determines the core gameplay experience of what you're doing, like the actual killing mobs in maps. What flavor of that you get to do. So this is going to mean a lot of trading for your core progression, because realistically you're not going to be finding the combinations that you want for any sort of strategy. You're going to have to be trading for them with live searches. I personally enjoy setting up live searches and being clever with weighted sums and things like that, but most people don't. And it is very laborious to do, and every time you change a strategy, you're gonna have to rechange all those, probably have multiple filters going, live searches going, all of that. And in Necropolis, we had a similar thing where the core mechanic for the league just required trading. There was no way around it. To get all the corpses to craft stuff in that league, you had to do a ton of trading, and I am very worried about that. Because that did actually burn me out. For the first time, like, I was burned out on trading in that league, specifically because of trading for corpses. So I'm definitely concerned that that will be the case here. Because like I was thinking, if they just do Endless Delve for this league event, I'm gonna keep playing PvE2, not worry about it, be happy for the people who want to play that. But they announced these alternate ascendancy classes and stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I think I have to give this a go. I saw Relics, and I'm like, oh, I'm definitely excited about that. Now I'm a bit more back on the fence again. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens with future reveals. So they mentioned respecking. They kind of almost positioned it as a pro. How like you won't have to respec different trees anymore, which is like very funny, because to me respecking an entire tree sounds way easier than like setting up a bunch of new trade filters and buying a bunch of new relics to change between them. But not only that, like this part here, experimenting and juggling between multiple league mechanics is going to be way harder, because if you've got relics that have 4 different league mechanics on them, 4 different things, let's say you want to change one of those things to experiment. So you're doing like Delirium, Breach, Abyss, whatever, and you want to just change out the Abyss for something else. You want to say, oh, I want to see what Expedition feels like in this strategy. Well, you're kind of like locked in a bit, right? You've got those relics that have 2 of the 3 things that you want, and you want to change that 3rd thing. It's not like you can just change that affix. You have to change the entire relics, or you just can't. So it seems like there's a lot more potential lock-in there. It's not as simple as just unspecking a cluster and putting it somewhere else. You have to go ahead and rebuild the whole board. And that means either looking through a bunch of stash tabs or setting up a bunch of trade searches and doing a bunch more trades every time you want to respec. And even if you have like a stash tab set up for each specific loadout for different strategies eventually, like a month, like a few weeks in, and you're set, you got everything cooking, you got your different loadouts set up. That still seems a little painful to swap between them. They obviously said that this is just kind of a quick throwaway thing, so they're not going to do a bunch of the quality of life they would normally have to make different loadouts. Like, this picture has the Atlas tree buttons. In theory, you could change between relic boards. I don't think that's going to be the case, but that would obviously be a good thing for quality of life. That would help with that. What have I missed? Oh, yeah, the power levels. This is why I wrote notes. The power levels have me a little bit concerned that this is the amount of space we have. It seems like this is going to be like a 2 slot, and this is a 1 slot, and this is a 1 slot, maybe. So presumably we're going to have ranging between 1 to 4 slot relics, I guess. Haven't seen any of the 3 or 4s yet, potentially, but we don't know exactly the size of them. But looking at the space here to the power level of these modifiers, I don't think that you're going to be getting as much out of the tree as compared to where you get to the tree. So we're going to have like 50% of the power level of the tree on average, especially considering like maybe you at the start of the event you have like very poor rolled relics, so you may be only going to have like a very small fraction of the power level of the tree captured in order to maybe get to 100% of the tree, or even whatever it can get to. You're obviously going to have really expensive and rare relics. So that kind of power level disparity there does sound a little concerning to me, that it's going to feel a bit watered down ultimately, which is not what I'd want out of this. If they're going to do this itemization system instead, it should be like way more powerful. They did mention that if you want to focus on one specific thing, so let's say you want to like maximize your chance of having strong boxes be openable again, so you can just spam click a strong box a bunch of times or something stupid. You, in theory, will be able to take this way higher than what's available in the tree. The tree has a preset number of nodes. In theory, you could get relics, every single relic rolled with this, and get way more than what you could normally get. So I think there's going to be some broken strategies out of that, but I do suspect that the average player's relic board here, their idols setup, is going to be just a more watered down version of what they'd normally have. I do have a little bit of hopium here for this one. So these are my like, maybe it's going to be a bit better than I fear. That is that maybe some of the mods they haven't shown yet are more exciting. I don't know why they wouldn't lead with more exciting ones. Hopefully they have some modifiers that aren't on the tree. They thought of some new stuff. I don't think any of this stuff that they have shown is examples of that. As far as I can tell, this stuff is all kind of available on the tree. So I don't know about that one, but we'll see. One thing that does give me hope is this Legion one here. 53% chance to have a Legion encounter. Comparing that to what's available on the tree, which is 16% for a notable, that actually does seem like a pretty good power level. If most of them are like that, it would in theory take 2, maybe 1 slot relics to fully activate Legion on your maps. Okay. If they're all kind of like that, if that's, you know, not just a pinnacle relic roll and maybe a bit more accessible, that could actually give me a little bit of hope that this could work out a little bit better. So maybe if they've got that, they've got some extra interesting modifiers, then hey, it might be a bit spicier than the tree, because this definitely needs to be spicier than the tree, I think. If you throw away determinism and smooth progression and like kind of enforce a bunch of trading, it at least needs to be really spicy. It's got to be a 4 slot relic. Oh no, I hope not. It is kind of like the resolution on this size image looks quite high, whereas you see this one here, it's quite blurry, which makes me think maybe this is a 1 slot sized up, because if you look at the PoEDB data mine stuff for these sorts of images, that's kind of how the way it works. This like is yeah, actually you make me a little worried. I'm a little worried maybe that might be a 4 slot. It's definitely a 2 slot for sure. But yeah, the way that's a little bit blurry seems like it's blown up from maybe like a 1 slot icon, whereas those maybe are 4s or something. This could be a 2 slot up and down maybe. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's like this up and down version of this. Hopefully the modifiers are powerful and the total level of what you can get there is way spicier than the actual passive tree. And then my other hope is that maybe the test shows that this is a pretty fun way to do things, and that adds something cool for Path of Exile 2 or even 1 in the future. Maybe they can add this as an add-on system, even if it's not necessarily a great idea to have it be replacing the Atlas passive skill tree. So I think this one's a little bit of a miss. I don't expect this is going to be a very popular announcement. I definitely think this, for this fun event kind of to hold people over until the next PoE 2 update or next PoE 1 league, would have been a good idea to throw this on top, have it be super spicy, juicy extra league. But I guess we'll see how it plays out. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Hope you folks enjoyed my rant. That's it for now. I'm Ziggy D. Thanks for watching.